Have you ever found yourself wondering, about the real long-term consequences of the choices you make?
Right.
Like how a decision that feels really good right now might lead to something painful later.
Yeah.
Or maybe the other way around.
Yeah, that tension between immediate feeling and the sort of ultimate outcome. It's a fundamental question.
Exactly. Well, today we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating ancient text. It lays out these 4 distinct ways of living,
Our paths, yeah.
each one with its own kind of present experience and, crucially, its future result.
Right. We're digging into parts of the Cūḷadhammasamādānasuttaṃ. It's an ancient Buddhist text, and it's brilliant because it categorizes these life approaches based on, well, how they feel now and where they end up.
So this deep dive is really about pulling out the core wisdom from these teachings, right?
Absolutely. Extracting the essence for us today.
Okay, so our goal here is to unpack these 4 paths, get into the details, the nuances, and see what they might offer us, for our own lives. Basically a shortcut to understanding this profound ancient perspective.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's begin with a scenario that, well, it sounds pretty appealing at first glance.
Ah, yes.
But it comes with a definite twist. A sting in the tail, you could say.
This is what the text labels as path 1. Present pleasure, future pain.
Okay.
The core idea here is, well, some people, maybe even spiritual seekers or ascetics back then, believed there wasn't really any fault in sensual pleasures.
So they just indulged.
They did. They indulged freely. And the text gets specific, like it mentions enjoying the soft, tender, hairy arm of a female ascetic, a Molibanda parabotia.
Wow, okay, very specific. And what happens if someone, say, warns them about this kind of indulgence?
They just dismiss it. They don't really buy the warnings about future dangers. It feels good now.
Uh-huh.
But the text is pretty blunt about the outcome. After death, it says they're reborn in a state of woe.
A bad destination.
Exactly. Perdition, hell. Places where they experience, quote, painful, sharp, bitter sensations.
Ouch. So the pleasure was temporary.
Very temporary. And it's only in that state of suffering that they have this realization, this aha moment, or maybe an oh no moment, that those earlier warnings were actually true.
So the immediate comfort just blinded them to the inevitable pain later on.
Precisely. And here's where it gets really interesting. As you said, the text uses this powerful analogy to really drive the point home.
Ah, the analogy. Let's hear it.
It's called the maluva vine analogy. Imagine this. A tiny seed from a maluva vine falls near a huge, beautiful salad tree.
Okay.
Now, the deity, the spirit living in that salad tree, she sees this seed and is immediately terrified, really anxious about it.
Just from a tiny seed.
Yeah, she senses the potential danger. But her friends, other tree spirits and deities, they're trying to calm her down.
What do they say?
Things like, oh, don't worry, maybe a peacock will eat it, or a deer, or a fire will burn it up. Maybe the forest workers will clear it away, or ants will carry it off. Or maybe, they say, it just won't sprout.
Trying to rationalize away the fear.
Exactly. But the seed does sprout.
Of course it does.
And it grows into this tender, soft, hairy, pendulous vine. And initially, the text says the salad tree deity actually finds the vine's touch pleasant.
Ah, there's the initial pleasure again.
Right. But then the vine starts to encircle the tree. It grows over the branches, creates this dense, choking tangle.
Oh, no.
And eventually, it splits the great trunks of the salad tree. It causes immense suffering for the tree deity inside.
Wow.
And it's only then, in that suffering, that the deity realizes her friends were wrong. And her initial fear, those warnings about the seed, they were absolutely right. She suffers now because of what initially felt pleasant.
That's incredibly potent. The pleasure itself becomes the agent of destruction, the Trojan horse, like you said.
It really is. It shows how something seemingly small and nice can lead to devastation if you ignore the long-term potential.
That analogy really makes you think, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Okay, so that's path 1. Now let's shift gears. Let's look at another path, one that starts tough.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly kind of stays tough in terms of the outcome.
Right. This brings us to path 2. Present pain, future pain.
Pain now, pain later. How did that work?
Well, this describes ascetics who practice really extreme forms of self-mortification. They have this belief, right, that suffering now, really enduring hardship, will automatically lead to a good result later on.
What kind of practices are we talking about?
Oh, the text lists quite a few intense ones. Going naked, for instance. Licking their hands clean instead of washing. Refusing food offered in certain ways, like from the mouth of a pot, or from a woman who's pregnant.
Wow, very specific rules.
Very. And extreme diets, too. Eating only once every few days, sometimes up to a week apart.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. Or consuming things like wild vegetables, millet, even stuff like rice husks, grass.
Yeah.
The text even mentions cow dung or just forest roots and fruits.
Goodness. What about clothing or physical practices?
Also extreme, wearing things like hemp or burial shrouds, rags from rubbish heaps, tree bark, animal hides, even grass fibers or owl feathers.
Owl feather.
Yeah. And then the physical austerities, plucking out their own hair and beard, refusing to sit down, just standing upright, or maintaining a squatting posture constantly, sleeping on thorny beds.
Thorny beds. That sounds purely like torture.
It does. And doing things like immersing themselves in cold water 3 times a day, every day, regardless of the weather.
Okay, so immense present suffering. But the outcome, you said, is also pain. Why?
That's the crucial point the text makes. Despite all this self-inflicted hardship, after death, they also end up reborn in a state of woe, a bad destination, hell.
So the suffering didn't purify them or earn them a good rebirth.
Apparently not, according to this text. What's fascinating is how it highlights that just enduring pain isn't enough. It's not inherently beneficial or redemptive on its own.
So the why and the how matter, not just the what.
Exactly. The intention, the method, the understanding behind the practice, that seems to be the key. Simply putting yourself through misery doesn't guarantee anything good. It could even be counterproductive if the view behind it is wrong.
So we've had pleasure leading to pain, and now pain leading to pain. This feels a bit grim so far.
It does lay out some stark realities, but now we get to something different.
Okay, good.
A path where suffering, intense struggle even, can actually lead to something better.
All right, I'm intrigued. Tell me about path 3, present pain, future pleasure.
So this path describes people who are, you might say, naturally wired with strong tendencies towards things like passion or hatred or delusion.
Okay, so they have a difficult internal landscape to begin with.
Very much so. And because of these strong inclinations, they frequently experience pain and displeasure, just arising from their own minds, their own reactions.
That sounds like a tough place to be.
It is. The text even says they are often weeping and tearful because of this inner turmoil. It's a real struggle.
Constant struggle. So where does the future pleasure come in? This seems counterintuitive again.
Here's the key difference. Despite this persistent, internally generated pain and displeasure,
Yes.
they actively practice the holy life fully and purely.
So they don't just give in to the turmoil.
Exactly. They're fighting it. They're channeling that struggle. Even though it's incredibly hard for them, maybe harder than for others, they commit to cultivating virtue, mindfulness, wisdom. They stick with the practice.
So the pain is present, maybe even unavoidable for them due to their nature, but their response to it is crucial.
Precisely. They face the internal difficulty head on and strive towards purity anyway. And the outcome? After death, they are reborn in a good destination, a heavenly world.
So it's about the direction they take, despite the pain, the effort.
That seems to be the core message here. It's the underlying effort, the intention towards a pure and wholesome life, even when, maybe especially when, it's incredibly difficult due to your own innate tendencies. Transformation is possible, but it requires engaging with the struggle constructively.
That's actually quite hopeful in a way. It acknowledges the reality of inner difficulty, but shows a path through it.
It does. It suggests that our starting point doesn't have to be our destination.
Right. Okay, so that leaves one more path, and this sounds like the one everyone would probably aim for. Pleasure now and pleasure later. How on earth is that achieved?
Well, this is path 4, present pleasure, future pleasure.
The ideal combo.
Seemingly, yes. This describes individuals who are naturally not intensely passionate, hateful, or deluded.
So they have a different starting point from path 3.
A very different one. They don't frequently experience that kind of inherent pain and displeasure arising from strong negative states. Their inner landscape is perhaps calmer, more balanced to begin with.
Okay, so they're already experiencing a kind of baseline pleasure or ease.
You could say that, a lack of intense suffering at least. And their practice. They live secluded from sensual pleasures and unwholesome states.
So not indulgence like path 1, but seclusion from them.
Correct. And critically, they engage in deep meditative practices. They cultivate and enter these progressively higher states of mental absorption, which are called the jhānas in Buddhism.
Jhānas. Can you give us a sense of what those are like? Are they pleasant?
Oh, yes. They are described as states of profound pleasure and peace, but not derived from the senses in the ordinary way. The first jhana, for example, is described as having rapture and pleasure born of seclusion, accompanied by focused thought.
Okay. Deep concentration leading to joy.
Exactly. Then they might progress to the second jhana, where the thinking quiets down, and there's an even deeper internal tranquility and unification of mind. Still filled with rapture and pleasure, but now born of concentration itself.
Wow.
And the text mentions going even further into the third and fourth jhanas, which involve even more refined states of equanimity and profound stillness, still inherently pleasant, but in a very subtle, peaceful way.
So they're actively cultivating this deep inner peace and clarity through discipline. It's a different kind of pleasure than Path 1's sensual indulgence.
Absolutely. It's a cultivated, refined, internal pleasure and peace, born from mental discipline and insight, not from external stimuli.
And the result for them, long term.
Like Path 3, after death, they are also reborn in a good destination, a heavenly world. So they experience a form of profound pleasure and well-being now through their practice, and that leads to continued well-being in the future.
So what does this all mean for us looking at these 4 paths? It feels like a pretty comprehensive framework for thinking about actions and consequences.
I think so. If you sort of connect the dots, it's really pushing us beyond just thinking, does this feel good or bad right now?
Right. It's about the bigger picture.
Exactly. It's about understanding the causal links, the connection between our actions, yes, but also our inner states, passion, hatred, delusion, or their absence, and the long-term effects, the consequences that ripple outwards.
It encourages much deeper awareness, doesn't it, of the fruit, as the text might say, that our present choices are likely to bear down the line.
Precisely. Whether that fruit comes from indulgence, or maybe misdirected effort, or that really sincere struggle against our own difficulties, or from mindful, dedicated cultivation.
Okay, so just to recap this deep dive for everyone listening, we looked at Path 1, present pleasure but future pain. The path of indulgence, powerfully shown by that Maluva vine analogy.
The insidious vine.
The Path 2, present pain and future pain, the path of just grinding self-mortification without the right view, which surprisingly leads nowhere good.
A cautionary tale about suffering for suffering's sake.
Then the really interesting one, Path 3, present pain, maybe due to strong inner struggles, but leading to future pleasure because of sincere, dedicated practice despite the difficulty.
The path of constructive struggle.
And finally, Path 4, present pleasure and future pleasure, achieved not through indulgence, but through seclusion, mental cultivation, and deep meditative states like the jhānas.
The path of mindful cultivation and inner peace.
Quite a map, doesn't it?
It really is. I think this ancient text offers us just a really powerful lens for examining our own lives. It suggests that, yeah, immediate feelings matter, we experience them, but real wisdom comes from understanding the consequences.
And aligning ourselves with actions and intentions that lead towards long-term well-being, not just fleeting comfort.
Exactly. Understanding how today's choices truly shape tomorrow.
So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on this week. As you go about your days, maybe pause and consider, are there any potential Maluva seeds in your own life right now?
Good question.
What seemingly small choices, maybe pleasant ones, maybe difficult ones, are you making today that might have unexpected long-term consequences down the road, pleasant or otherwise? What really stands out to you from this deep dive into these 4 ancient paths?